33. Start your message with the word Kent or email kentbreakfast@bbc.co.uk.
Give us a call, 03459 811111, or tweet us at BBC Radio Kent.
Ziggy played guitar, jamming good with Weird and Gilly and the Spiders from Mars. Oh, I got the baby, I got the spit in my face. This mellow back chicks just put my spine out of place.
Well, it's 45 years since David Bowie played a legendary gig at the Beckenham Free Festival. Well, now the famous event is marked with a commemorative concert to raise money for the bandstand the singer performed on. Well, this morning, Phil Harrison is finding out more.
Good morning, John and Maggie. Yes, we're on a David Bowie odyssey today. And where I am doesn't really look like a top music venue. It's got rafters at the top, which completely stripped of paint. There's a bit of rust on the top of this, and the roof is in danger of leaking. It also doesn't have any sides. It's a bandstand here in Beckenham Park, just off Croydon Road, and it's here on the 16th of August in 1969, nearly 45 years ago, that David Bowie played the Beckenham Free Festival. 45 years on, there's going to be a festival on exactly the same day at exactly the same venue right here at Beckenham Rec. And it's all to raise money for this bandstand. It's dilapidated at the moment and hasn't even got any hanging baskets from it. It really could do with a lick of paint and some thorough restoration. And that's what the money raised from the Free Festival is going to put towards. So, John, you might actually recognise this. I know this is part of your old stomping ground, but this is the bandstand that features on the inside cover of the Space Oddity album. So join me throughout the course of the morning as I meet the people behind what is set to be a fundraising exercise for the Beckenham Rec bandstand and restore a piece of music history right here on BBC Radio Kent.
Phil back with us later. You know, it got me thinking, Maggie, being a bit of a David Bowie fan, I thought back to a track that was on his first album, his first serious album. It was called Memory of a Free Festival, and I wondered if he wrote it for that Beckenham Free Festival. This is what he did on the track. Pretty awful, but...
Oof.
Maybe I should announce it, shall I? The memory of a free festival. The children of the summer's end gathered in the dampened grass. We played our songs and felt the London sky resting on our hands. It was God's land.
I wonder if he wrote that after doing that Beckenham Free Festival.
We'll have to try and ask him.
Well, yes,
I don't know
I'll
when
send
we
him an
will.
email.
Yes.
Anyway, there you go.
Send him a tweet.
More from Phil in Beckenham later on this morning.
Still ahead on BBC Radio Kent, we'll be finding about Kent's teenage cricket international, Tash Farrant.
It's nearly 4 minutes to 8. A concert takes place this summer on the 45th anniversary of a legendary gig at Beckenham Recreation Ground. In August 1969, David Bowie played the Beckenham Free Festival. Next month's concert will raise money for the bandstand he performed on. It needs a bit of TLC. We had a look on some of those video sites, and we found a piece of David Bowie which allegedly was recorded at that free festival. Here it is.
The first one's called Space Oddity.
David Bowie performing Space Oddity. We did actually speak to an expert who was actually at that free festival. And she told us that's not David Bowie singing at that festival. There was no recording ever done. She doesn't think it is. But according to this website, they say it is. But anyway, we'll be back with Phil Harrison at the bandstand where David Bowie performed a little later in the programme. And Gordon in Rochester got in touch this morning. He said, reminiscing of David Bowie this morning, I can't remember the concert in 69, but I did live next door to David Bowie in Southend Road in Beckenham. I know it well. And then moved next door to his mum. To see, I used to see him quite a bit in the early 70s. Thanks for making me remember, says Gordon in Rochester. Well, it's a pleasure, Gordon.
Some fantastic pictures in all the papers today with the finishing 24 minutes to 9 on BBC Radio Ken Breakfast with John and Maggie. Now, a concert takes place this summer on the 45th anniversary of a legendary gig at Beckenham Rec. In August 1969, David Bowie played the Beckenham Free Festival.
Ground control to Major Tom, your circuit's dead. There's something.
Well, now another concert is being planned to raise money for the bandstand he performed on, and Phil Harrison is at the Rec this morning.
Good morning, John and Maggie. Well, it's hard to believe that I'm stood looking at a famous music venue. It's got cracked wood at the top of the ceiling, the roof leaks, there's rust at the top of the finial, and the pillars at the side are very rusty as well. All in all, it could do with some tender loving care and a lick of paint. I'm here at the bandstand at Beckenham Recreation Ground, just off Croydon Road, which is busy at the moment, lots of people heading to work. But in 1969, this was an oasis of peace, part of the musical dream, where a free festival was being held, and headlining it was David Bowie. And 45 years later, to raise money to restore this very bandstand, Natasha Ryzhova is organising another concert which will aim to put this bandstand back into tip-top condition. Why have you got involved, Natasha?
Well, hello. It was actually by complete chance that I came to do this. I was living in Russia as a teenager, and I had this very bandstand pinned on my wall as a part of the Space Oddity cover. And years later, I moved to London, and some years after that, accidentally, I moved to Beckenham. We bought a lovely little house here with the family, and I had no idea that David Bowie lived here. I didn't know as much detail, but happened to, get to know the problem with the local park, and found that this, bandstand needs, care. And then I pieced it all together and realized that this was the very bandstand that I actually had on my wall. So it just felt very mystical, and I thought, something could be done, and I jumped on it.
And you've got a fantastic lineup of bands appearing in, a couple of weeks' time, 45 years later, after that famous concert with Bowie. So what's going to be happening?
Okay, well, on the day, on the bandstand itself, we will have a lovely musical program which will involve some of the original festival members. Some of the guys that played in 1969 will be playing with us again. Then we'll have Bowie tribute band, and we will have some current London bands that are playing and gigging now in London.
So if you're a David Bowie fan, this is the place to come to really pay tribute to the Thin White Duke.
Oh, absolutely. It will be lovely. We have also invited artists and performers and poets to come and join us on the day and casually display their work on blankets, so everyone is welcome.
Well, one man who was here in 1969 is Roger Wootton. He was part of the band Comus, and you played on this very spot. Can you just describe what the festival was like all those years ago?
Well, it was a very loose, free atmosphere. It was gorgeous, hippie period. We did a residency at the Beckenham Arts Lab alongside David Bowie. So when the festival came up, we did the festival as well, and then we continued for some years after that. We've recently reformed and we're back on the road again. But it was a good atmosphere. It's a small bandstand, but this time we can put the PA outside it, and hopefully the atmosphere will be as good as it was then. The festival also ran last year, and apparently it went very well. I wasn't here then, but I will be on this, playing solo on the bill for this one.
And had David Bowie the makings of being a star even back then?
I wouldn't have said so, to be honest with you. It wasn't that evident. And then, of course, Space Oddity, the timing was so good because we'd just been to the moon, and so that was the big hit, and that launched him. But the festival was before he had that hit.
Well, Roger and Natasha, pleasure, and hopefully the festival on the 16th of August will be just as successful and remembered as the one in 1969. This is Phil Harrison at Beckenham Rec for BBC Radio Kent.
And that is Roger's band Comus, who've now reformed as they sounded 45 years ago.
Yes, indeed. Still to come on BBC Radio Kent Breakfast, we'll hear how Thanet Beach could be out of... It's coming up to 8 minutes to 9. Now, it's 45 years since David Bowie played a legendary gig at the Beckenham Free Festival.
Ground control to Major Tom, your circuit's dead. There's something wrong. Can you hear me, Major Tom? Can you hear me, Major Tom? Can you hear
Well, now the famous event is marked with a commemorative concert to raise money for the bandstand the singer performed on. It needs a bit of TLC. This morning, Phil Harrison has been finding out more.
Good morning, John and Maggie. That's the sound of the iron railings surrounding the bandstand here at Beckenham Rec. I'm walking round it at the moment and looking up at various angles of the roof. You can see the wood in the ceiling has split. There's paint falling off it. It really does look quite sorry for itself. The finial at the top is all rusty, and the pillars, each one of them has got paint flaking off it. Some lovely flowers around the actual base of the bandstand, but the bandstand itself in a sorry state. It's difficult to imagine that this stage graced David Bowie some 45 years ago. But soon it's going to be hosting its own concert once again on the same date, the 16th of August, to raise funds to resurrect it again and make it a top Victorian music venue that hosts stars.
Well, someone who knows a lot about that concert is Mary Finnigan. Bowie was living in her house at the time of the Beckenham Free Festival in 1969, and Mary joins us now. Mary, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Hello. You were his landlady, effectively. I hope he paid his rent on time, did he?
No, he didn't pay his rent on time at all. He was flat broke when he came to stay with me, so I supported him for a short while.
So you funded the burgeoning talent that was David Bowie?
Me and several other people, yes.
Yes. Tell us about the event then. You were heavily involved in it, weren't you?
Well, David's father died shortly before the Free Festival, so he was not in a very good state at all. In fact, he was very, very unhappy, grieving deeply. So most of the organisation fell on my shoulders, and I did it on a wing and a prayer because I had no previous experience of that type of thing. But as it turned out, it was much easier in 1969 than it is today because there was much less red.
Yes.
And we did it very much in a sort of anarchic, ad hoc way. And it turned out to be an absolutely amazingly wonderful day, which, of course, David commemorated in his soft memory of a free festival.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I'm a bit of a Bowie fan, and I remember Memory of a Free Festival from the Space Oddity, and I dug it out this morning. I'm just going to play a bit of it.
Maybe I should announce it, shall I? The Memory of a Free Festival.
And it got me thinking, Mary, I was wondering whether he did write that song for the festival, and you're telling me he did.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. But it didn't reflect his state of mind actually at the festival. He has admitted afterwards that he was somewhat grumpy.
Yes. Now, we've also found on one of those sites where you can get videos and hear stuff from the past, this, and they say this is a recording of him playing at the festival.
The first one's called Space Oddity.
But Mary, you reckon that's not him playing at the festival, don't you? It's him, but it's...
That's a demo. I don't think that was played outdoors at all. I think that's a studio demo.
Oh, your phone's breaking up, Mary. I don't know if you can give it a bash or something.
No, you're breaking up. I can't hear you.
Yeah, no, we can't hear you either, but we can now. So basically, how many sort of people were at this festival? Can you remember?
Oh, it must have been at least 1,000, probably more.
Yeah. And, of course, David had already had the hit with Space Oddity, so I suppose he was the big draw, really.
Well, we were playing Space Oddity all the time. The DJ there, Goff. And between acts, he played Space Oddity a lot. But it was not yet a hit at that point. That happened later.
Right. And I suppose if you were around at the time, you probably, because the other places David played in Beckenham were the 3 Tons and the Beckenham Arts Lab, wasn't it?
Well, the Beckenham Arts Lab happened at the 3 Tons.
Right.
And other places as well. It started as a folk club, which David and I and another couple called Christina and Barry Jackson started at the Three Towns on a Sunday evening in order to make a little money.
Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it, when you think from those very small acorns, what an oak has grown. Have you heard from David since at all?
Not really, no. Can't say I have.
No. But it's a great thing to dine out. I mean, just tell us about what he would do on a daily basis when he was at your house. I mean, how did he spend his days?
Playing music, composing, writing songs, testing them out.
And did you ever hear anything that you later found on an album?
Absolutely. Most of the second album was written while he was living with me.
Right, amazing. Great times. So, well, let's hope that bandstand can be restored, Mary. It'll be a fitting tribute, wouldn't it?
It'll be wonderful.
Yes.
And I hope everybody from Radio Kent will come and join the fun on the 16th.
Mary, thank you for joining us. Mary Finnigan, who was David Bowie's landlady back in 1969. He didn't pay any rent because he didn't have any money. But anyway, she can claim that start of a great career.
It's just coming up to 9 o'clock and Jules is here with the mid-morning show. And Jules...